Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank Podcast. Bill, it is a pleasure to have you on the show. Well, your name's been mentioned a few times on the show already, but do you mind introducing yourself to everyone out there listening?
Man, I certainly don't. My name is William Lunsford. Officially, everybody calls me Will or they call me Bill. I'm from Texarkana, Arkansas, lifelong resident, 64 years old, and been a Bigfoot researcher for now probably 47 years. And if not, I'm within a day of two or 47 years. And so when I saw my first Bigfoot in 1977, and I was very, very unprepared, was not a Bigfoot believer. It changed my life. And as the area that I saw the thing in, I never went back to by myself again. Then 8 years later, I have another sighting down on a boat ramp, and I've got my little 8-year-old nephew with me. And man, that scares you to death when you've got family there. So anyway, after that, right there, both times I knew I had to find out more about these creatures if my area was going to coincide with his. And so 1977, there wasn't much, but by 1985, there was. And so again, I began to be a researcher from the books, not just from my time in the woods, because I'm in the woods all the time. I worked at UPS as a driver. I made sure that my UPS route was in an area that was in the country, paralleling what's called Sulphur River, which comes down out of Dallas, around Dallas down there, and comes back through. And so I was through there with that, always researching. Man, like I said, if I'm on the way to church and there's a patch of woods, I'm steadily scanning the edges of the wood line there to see if there's something there. Because I'm gonna tell you all this right now. I'm very much a Christian man, and if my soul depends on this, I'm going to tell y'all truthfully: Bigfoot does exist, and not in just the singular, but in the plural. Bigfoot does exist, and there's several kinds. But I'm telling y'all that in the honest truth, and I think those people will tell you that no, they'll say, yeah, his character. He may be a character with everything else. Matter of fact, you might want to change the name of this show to this guy here's discovering something crazy, out of his mind, instead of just but anyway, that's something I do want to disclose to everybody. And so with that right there, like I said, being a researcher like that, I've continued doing it. I've met some really nice people. Just in general, I've been able to pick up several more people that research with me. I've got about 4 or 5. They're just, boy, just as honest, good old genuine people. It's what you ever want to meet. And so we have been very, very successful. And we've got several pictures. People say Bigfoot pictures don't exist. I've got them from my cell phone. I've got them from my game camera. My wife got one with her digital camera. So Stephen Hill, my research partner, Stephen works as a logger. He was sitting there one day on his machine. He looks out. He's actually filming a migration where they're coming down out of the hill. So Stephen has seen them as well. Very fortunate to have that. I'll say it's probably not as much to do with us. It's what it has to do with the Bigfoot. But Bigfoot is real, and I'm always glad to talk about it. And with mentioning what Shane, thank you for his input. As good and honest guys you ever want to meet. Y'all ever get a chance to go listen to their stuff? With him and his buddy Brian, you can see the love and respect they have for each other. It's kind of like watching Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis together because they're always cutting up. And but it was very, very good presentation that they put on it. I know you last year. They're some of the best track masters that you've ever seen in your life. So again, very pleased and very honored to have his respect there and the shout outs that y'all gave me. And I do appreciate that. So
Could you explain to me your first encounter with Bigfoot in 1977?
sure. And like I said, everybody who's listened to me on any of the podcasts or anything has heard this, but at the risk of repeating myself, I'm going to tell you, I was down there fishing, and I was a teacher's aide at my school. I gotten out early. Teacher had nothing for me to do. He had to leave. So I go down to these gravel pits where I fished all the time here. Fished there with my dad since I was a young man. So I mean that was my thing because I was a senior in high school. I was almost ready to graduate and I was fixing to go try to play college football. And so I go down there fishing, and boy, everything's just great. There's nothing out of the ordinary. But as I went down there, there's a place there. It has a gas line. This gas line runs probably 2.5 miles in its full length. But on both sides of this gas line, there's a bunch of gravel pits, or people call them borrow pits. They borrow the gravel from the earth. Nature reclaims them. They get filled up with fish. Boy, they're actually just a factory for other animals to come and eat. You've got the frogs, snakes, everything else that comes around, the things that come to drink. There's actually alligators in there. And so I was down there walking down there this one day, and whereas about a week and a half to 2 weeks earlier, I had been down there. And as I was walking down the gas line, something began to pace me. I stopped, and it stopped, and then I started up again. Then it started up again, catches up to me. So I stop again. I start hollering, hey, you're not scaring me. I know you're over there. So nothing happens. I continue walking. Finally, it begins to catch up with me. And so whenever it does, I'm like, oh, man, this thing's paying attention to me now. Was I thinking Bigfoot? No, because I did not believe. We have a creature here called the Fouke monster. I'm about 15 to 20 miles from Fouke, Arkansas. Probably the second most famous Bigfoot there is besides Patty there on the west coast over there. And so as I'm walking down there again, when I get to where I have to cross this creek, well, as I step into the woods, this thing screams at me. So man, I'm running. I'm already jogging to try to get away from it to get to the end of the highline. Well, sure enough, whenever he screams, man, I run down to a place where I can ford the creek, get across there, and then go back to my vehicle. There's nothing there. I'm like, man, you dodged a bullet right here, whatever that was. So I went and bought me a Bowie knife. I was only 17, couldn't buy a pistol legally at that time at any time. But anyway, whenever I come back here about a week and a half later, I get to a place where I have to cross this gas line. I've been noticing the smell. I noticed it the first time I was there, but it was really bad. But this time it was really bad. As I go down there to cross this gas line, I see a shape over there on the left-hand side of the road. It's just a road where they haven't removed gravel. It's not like a two-lane road. It's like a two-lane lane, actually. I mean, a one-lane lane, not a two-lane, but a one-lane lane. So this thing's over on the left-hand side of the road, and I see the shadow. And I'm like, man, I don't remember that being there. And I stopped, and so whenever I did, I'm like, oh, man, your imagination's running away with you. You remember what happened there, what it was screamed at you. So I start to walk again. I stop, and I'm like, no, that's not right. So I sit there and look at it. Finally, I had just a little bit of time to go fish this last couple of gravel pits and get back to my vehicle, which is about a mile and a quarter away. Whenever I start to walk again, I stop and this thing stands up. And whenever it stands up, it has a limb in its left hand. And he's up there and he brings the limb up to where it's supposed to go. And he continues to stand. He's about 7.5 to 8 foot tall. I'm going to say 7.5 probably, but for fear of exaggeration, but I really, there's no trepidation saying he could have been 8 foot tall. But my gosh, he was just so wide. I promise you. When people have reported the Fouke monster, they're like, oh, he's 6.5 or 7 foot tall and 250 pounds. Man, I'm 280 pounds right now. That's nothing. That was nowhere close to where what I was seeing. So as I'm sitting there looking at this thing, he walks out, he stops in the middle of the road and he begins to teeter. And he's sitting there looking at me, staring at me just like that right there. Man, I'm praying with everything I'm worth, Lord, this is the way I'm going to die, just let him find my body, take care of my mom. My daddy passed away. Take care of my mom. And they told us, if you don't help me, just don't help him. So as I'm sitting there looking, he walks back to the very tree he was. He gets the same limb. He pulls the leaves in there and gets it chew like that, turns them loose, walks back out in the middle of the road. And wherever he does, and we're having another stare down. And I'm like, this is where it's going to happen. This is how I'm going to die. But as he began to step, he looked like he's going to step forward, and he just wheeled on that left leg. 2 steps, he's into the woods, and the third step, you can't hear him. Man, I wanted to run as fast as I could ever run in my life, but my feet would not move. I'm sitting there trying to process all this as to what this is. I'm thinking, was that a bear? Was that a sloth? I knew it was nobody who'd come down and mess with me in any kind of a ghillie suit or Bigfoot suit or anything like that. Number one, it just wasn't worth it. Number two, it was too far to go. Number three, with all the cover and stuff there, they'd have snagged that suit. It'd have ripped it right off of it with all those briars. But finally, my sense of bearing begins to come back. And wherever it does, I take off running. I used to be a miler. Like I said, I played high school football, college football. But I took off running, ready to jump into one of these pits if I had to swim away, go under the water. And I was a very good swimmer. But I decided to keep running. I ran back. I jumped across this creek called 4 Mile Creek. I had to wait it on the way down there. On the way back, I jumped across, skittered up the side of the bank. I'm running across what used to be a landfill. And man, I'm like, he's going to get me here. I had nowhere to hide, and it's just plain wide open. Nothing happens. I get to this covered canopy of road. I'm like, he'll get me here, sure enough. Well, he does, and I get down to the gate. I throw my stuff over the gate. I dive through the gate. I get my key in the ignition, and whenever I do, I look out, and there's my fishing tackle, and then there's my knife, a well that I just bought like a week and a half ago. I thought about what to do. Said had started my car. I thought, well, man, I need to get my fishing tackle. It was, like I said, had given to me by somebody that was a very special friend at the time. And I was a poor kid also that rod and reel mill. So not just for the sentimental value that it had, but for the value it had. So I threw it inside my side seat there, and I took off back home. Told my mom, and she kind of giggled at first, and she said, "Son, are you sure?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm sure, Mama. I saw the Fouke monster." She goes, "Just don't. If I was you, I just wouldn't tell anybody." Well, what, like a knucklehead, I told. And because I wanted to relieve
Yeah,
some of
but let's
what
say, who wouldn't tell? Like that's a threatening encounter right there you just had.
Yeah. It was, man. And I wanted to release some of this pressure that I was feeling right there. Even right now, man, when I get to think about it, like I said, I can tear up and you can see that my breath increases and things like that. My wife will tell you, after being married to her for 42 years, said every time I tell this story, the same things happen. I relive it. The body, the body functions just kind of take over on their own. But anyway, that was my first sighting. And then, and I've never been back there by myself since then. And it was very, very scary, very, very real. I had seen tracks before, but before I was getting down there, but I had thought there's a lot of beavers down there. And, some of the gravel pits when it rains and on the road, you'd have these little mud puddles. I thought, well, heck, that's just some mud puddles, some beavers on their tail. Well, that's not what it was. So again, then in '85, then I was with my nephew and I saw one on the boat ramp about 5 miles away from there. So I knew then I had to learn more about it, and I did. And the more I learned, man, it was like an itch I couldn't scratch, because it was just so many other people that were having encounters just like me, the people I was meeting on my UPS route, and I wasn't afraid to ask the question, even at the risk of sounding stupid, that hey, you ever see anything or hear anything out here? You ever seen Bigfoot out here? And a lot of people would kind of ridicule me, but then every now and then you get that honest answer, and had one lady say, she said, huh? I said, Bigfoot. And I said, yeah. I said, if he doesn't live out here, it's because it's too far for him to walk. And she goes, if you think that, come back here about dark. And I told her, so I'm afraid of the dark. And she goes, you should be. Well, man, that just scratched another itch right there. I'm like, I got to find out what this is. So she invited me back, but I changed UPS routes. Didn't get a chance to go back to her house again until later. And then she had already moved away. But anyway, that's kind of how it got started. And man, I've been doing it ever since. I'm very passionate about it because I know that Bigfoot is real. I want people to know that they're real. I take a lot of scuttlebutt from people and a lot of joking and stuff because they want to, like I said, act like you're crazy. But I'm not crazy. Haven't been crazy. Never been diagnosed or anything else like that. But I have seen a bunch of them, and so has Stephen. Shane has got the evidence there, the footprint evidence. Some people say, well, the footprint's not evidence. Well, why don't you leave that
Well, hold
footprint?
on. Before we go into all, we're going to get to all that at a certain point. Let's just try and
Sure.
the incidents though. You mentioned that you were scared and you were felt terrified. But if you look back at with hindsight, do you feel threatened? Did you think that you were threatened in that scenario, or is it just maybe because you've never encountered something like that before? Because I'm trying to get a lot of obviously views on Bigfoot goes from threatening to non-threatening to it just seems like there's just this mystique about him. So I'm curious if you feel like he was a threatening species. Was it a territorial thing, or was it just an incident where two creatures that are kind of disconnected in a world that kind of just happened upon each other?
I truly think as much as I'd fish down there, I think if with him being there, if that's his home range, he had seen me before. But there appeared to be, he didn't get angry with me, but he postured to me when he got onto the road, like, don't come down here, man. He's just steadily just looking, never takes his eye off of me. And I'm sitting there looking at him, and he's like, you probably want to stay there. Now, it could have been, I had one guy ask me, could it have been like he had some kind of illness, and that's why he was over there eating the leaves like a dog does eating grass. Well, that's a pretty good thought. I'd never even thought about that right there. But what he did was kind of let me know, hey, this is my territory, and you want to stay where you are. And I wasn't about to go any further than where I was right there. So again, whenever I left, that was the last time I was down there for a long, long time.
Now, through your research, though, learning more about Bigfoot after all these years, do you start to like what are some signs that one might be in the area, or if you're looking at a territorial aspect of things, how do you know that this is a location where they might be located and you need to stay away from this location in case you're not doing research, something of that sort?
Okay, that's there's a lot of things that you can clue you in that you've got Bigfoot. First is naturally what you can see visually. I had a friend of mine. I took him Bigfoot footing with him and my wife, and he said, "Man, he said I can't believe both y'all's eyes just hit the ground immediately. Instead of just looking around or looking at the surroundings." I said because that's looking for tracks. Because these things have been reported to go down through there and park where this little parking lot is. It's a grass parking lot. So we were looking for tracks right there. Then we looked also, one thing that you can see limb formations. You find tree breaks, and they can break as tall as they are. They can break trees, anywhere from 7 to 10 feet tall. I think it's probably some kind of markers. Sometimes it may be a feat of strength. You'll see structures that they have made where they take the limbs and just kind of weave them together. It's not just like it'd take 3 or 4 tornadoes spending the same time to make these and to put them together like they are. And the intent and the design that you see, like I said, they could actually be in a modern art museum. And so you realize that hasn't been done like that. Again, you find when you get down there, a lot of times you'll discover some bodies of some other animals there that are been eaten. As a rule, from what I found down here, Bigfoot is omnivorous. It eats plants and it also eats animals. But the animals, it tends to be that their intestines and the heart and the lungs and stuff is more what they eat, not necessarily just what they eat as far as with the flesh and stuff. And so then the rest of the animals that you would find in there, when you go in there, if there's a Bigfoot around, you're not going to hear a bird. You're not going to hear frogs. They tend to know when there is a master predator where the alpha is around, and whether it's because they can put off a something called infrasound or a sign to these other animals. Or they also produce infrasound, which is what elephants produce, tigers produce, lions produce, and so whether it's that, but the other animals are just not wanting to be discovered. So whenever it's all quiet like that right there, then you listen. A lot of times you'll hear them. Bigfoot makes a variety of noises. Bigfoot, I've heard them from anything to like that right there, just like a cough almost, to a whoop, doing something other like that. The first one that I was down there the day that it was following me down the gas line was a scream. And man, I've heard every animal there is down here. I've been in these woods for all my life, grew up down those woods, and instead of, it was and it lasted about like that, but my clothes were actually vibrating. And I'm like, buddy, you better get the heck out of here. Wherever that is much bigger than what you are. Now, like I said, we have bears, we have panthers, we got coyotes, we got every animal that you can imagine that would live here in Arkansas. And that was none of those animals right there. So if you hear something other like that, those kind of calls, they whistle, they make a whistling noise, they knock on trees, and you'll hear the tree knocks over there. And then sometimes you'll hear them they actually have a syllabic language. Sometimes you can hear them some people want to call it gibberish. I don't know if it's gibberish or not, but I know it's probably something they understand. And so you can hear that language as well. So those are some general signs that you have right there that you've got some Bigfoot in the area. And a lot of people tend to just dismiss it. Oh no, these things aren't real. No, they're real, and they have ways. Their ways of doing with the tree structures and things is probably a way of them communicating with another. Could be feats of strength. It could be this is my territory. It could be a deal where I believe, and my research has found that Bigfoot are a lot like deer. They have a bedding area and they have a feeding area. They don't tend to overlap like that. So you'll see the sign from them kind of going from one area to another. And so it's they also, I think, have what you want to call recreation areas for their babies. Steve and I get a lot of pictures of babies. I've got the world's smallest, at the time anyway, maybe different now, but at the time I have a 3 3/4 inch track that I casted from a baby that we found there in the woods. And like I said, the whole thing, if you can, you may not can see it because of the blasted glare. But anyway, his toes right there at the end of that finger, his heels right here at the end of this other finger. And so we found that out there. We've actually seen this baby now on his mama's shoulder one time after that. And then we found some tracks last year, and this little booger appears to have grown several inches. His track now is about 11 to 13 inches, something like that. So, but that's what it is right there. And
Did you come across any different toe structures or things that maybe you can correlate with Shane? He mentioned that you found a three-toed cast, or you have a three-toed cast, which I think is very interesting.
this one here is actually a little three-toed cast. Like I said, let a friend of mine brush it up a little bit to get some of the dust out of there, and he brushed just a little too hard. But because of the dust, actually made we could see the fingers that were actually as part of the print a little better. But I found three-toed tracks. The fount monster, the creature I said something about a while ago, was actually rumored to have three-toed tracks. And it wasn't just a rumor; it was true. It had tracks with three toes. But coincidentally, Stephen and I find three-toed tracks up there. We have an area there right at the foothills of the Ouachita Mountains. We find the three-toed tracks there. We find four-toed tracks. We find five-toed. We find six-toed. Sometimes we even find some look like two-toed tracks. Now, could they have gotten in a trap? Maybe so, but we do find, so the toe structure is different. The way they look is different. The head shape is different. Some of them got big cone heads up there, like what you see in a gorilla. Some of them, the heads are round. We call them hanks. And some of them, they kind of pooch out at the cheeks, kind of like Stewie on Family Guy, if you ever watched that show. So they do. They have a difference in the way they look. Their color is not always the same. They're not always black. Although my first few that I saw were black. After that, I've seen a blonde one. I've seen one that has the rust color like a pine needle. I've seen some that had some gray and mixed into his fur, and then some that had a little bit of red kind of mixed into their fur. So again, it's real. It's not just that they all look the same. They don't, and that's whether it's a species difference or just whether it's in the individual. We
Like a
can't
tribe.
tell. Yeah, a tribe. They do have, man, they travel in tribes. They've got their own packs. And whenever they do, they're very protective of each other, whether they're actually kin folks or not. So they actually have their own tribes, and it could be something in doing that. Sometimes that could tend to some inbreeding, which could cause some of the three-toed tracks, the four and five, and even let's say the six-toed track I found one six-toed track there. Man, it's amazing. To see that, I just died laughing because I wasn't expecting that. But again, it's something other that we don't understand yet until we can get a live specimen uh, to study, because most everything we have right now, they even in any DNA deals are about comparison, and we don't necessarily have as much to compare on their DNA as far as what makes them grow the three-toe tracks and things is what we have with other creatures right there. So until we can get a little more, get something that we can study, then we're going to be just with a comparison basis, and it may be hit or miss, it may be right on, but until then, we just can't prove it.
Well,
But
what
what
about
we can, go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, what about sending scientific data to academics or to sending it to researchers? I mean, are you a little bit nervous about that? I've heard stories of people having their hair little pieces or samples swiped, or researchers just not returning back some of the things that some Bigfoot researchers have brought to academia or brought to law enforcement or something like that. So that is a real concern.
Well, it is because I've talked to probably seven or eight people that have had hair samples sent in. They've sent in, their cast to people, and then they don't get them back. And here they are with evidence, and I don't know if that's being intercepted. But I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but I do believe I know the government knows they're here. That's for sure.
There's kill squads, if I'm not mistaken, of kill squads for Bigfoot.
No, exactly, man. We had one night on Mercer Bayou down there in Texarkana. And when we went to go down there that night to Bigfoot hunt, they had the road blocked off there, and there was a bunch of black SUVs down there, but we couldn't see the boats. We could see the trailers. So we went to another boat ramp down there. It's about 15 to 20 miles on the upside of Mercer Bayou. And when we did, we heard the airboats that they put in there just and and there's a lot of hog cutting that goes on like this, but it's not done by people in black SUVs. And so we left and went back, and sure enough, they were still there. Thought we could outweigh them, but we didn't. But there's also been some down here in Louisiana. A friend of mine's brother, who lives down there around Fort Polk, Louisiana, they came to his house, knocked on his door, and I said, "Have you seen anything strange or heard anything strange around here?" And he said, "You mean like the Bigfoot?" Because he's a knower. He's seen him. Well, he said, "Have you seen anything strange?" He said, "So you're not going to tell me?" He said, "Why am I going to tell you?" And they said, "Well, here's our card. If you see anything, will you contact us?" He goes, "No, I will not." He said, "If you're going to want transparency from me, I'm going to expect it from y'all." But coincidentally, about 4 or 5 nights later, he heard the same thing. He heard the kill squad, the kill squad, or whatever you want to call them, the units there. They'll go out and kill these Bigfoot. And for whatever reason, they don't want it to be known that they're real, but they are real. And like I said, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I've talked to some law enforcement people, and some of them will be just as honest with me as be. Yeah, we get reports all the time. And then we get other people there that, well, I'm just not supposed to say anything. And then some of them just kind of hug their shoulders like that, just kind of grin. Whatever, how you can interpret that however you want to, but law enforcement does know, government does know. Mount St. Helens, when it erupted in 1980, they were carrying them off in daggum nets from helicopters. Where those bodies went to, I have no idea. According to some people, they're actually coming down trying to get medical help from being burned from the lava and things like that. So I've got friends that have been up there at Washington and Oregon and things, and one of them was actually at Fort Lewis, Washington. Well, as a soldier, one of the first things they gave him was a book on what to do in case of a Sasquatch encounter. Whether they were, it wasn't anybody trying to play a joke on him or anything else like that. Because there's also one in the little town of Copperas Cove, Texas, down there in their parks department there. Copperas Cove is the same hometown of RG3, Robert Griffin, the Heisman Trophy winner there. And so that's there in their city park. There have been Sasquatch sightings here. If you see one, do this, don't do this, and things. So they know they're there. And the reason I try to bring it to people is because, like I said, I don't want that somebody get hurt and then it be on my soul or be on my conscience, and they are real. Now, so far as you said, everything has been kind of docile. I've had two experiences that have gotten aggressive and could have gotten worse. I had my wife and son with me one night when that happened, and he come charging in, and it was during the springtime. And I don't know whether he was Twitter pated or whether he was just crazy, but I was fixing to wear him out to protect my family. And like I said, I carry a pistol and spotlight, but during the spotlight's all you need. When I hit him with the spotlight, he went down on all fours, ran back 5 or 6 yards, and then stood up and then took back off towards the Sulphur River, jumped up in a tree. We could hear him in the tree. Then finally he jumped out, took off again towards the river, and we could hear his buddy over there, ruh, ruh, ruh. Well, I didn't even know the buddy was over there because I've been so concentrated on this other one. So it is. It's they can be. You just don't know. It's there's always danger in any of this. But as far as for the Bigfoot, depends on what kind of intangibles. If you got babies there, you know what a mama anything will do to protect their babies. And so if that happens right there, also in a feeding deal, how some animals react to protecting their kills or protecting their food source, or just to get you out of there. I've been in there when Bigfoot's been in a territory rage, and man, they've run me out of there just quick. And so, and when they do that right there, you're amazed because they could catch me at any time. I've talked to other people that have been chased by Bigfoot. They said, man, he could have caught me at any time, but they just want you out of their territory. So that's true stories, not just by me, but by others. I've interviewed over 200 people, man, and the things that they tell are the same things I've experienced. They're not just from the same parts of the country, but they're from different parts of the country, but they just react in the same way.
Has it surprised you that there's been a lot of depictions of Bigfoot that have been so vast or widely kind of different? Do you think that's because of the different species, or do you think that everyone has like a different understanding or maybe different experience? Because I've heard like mind speak between some of these creatures about how they communicate. I've heard of camouflage, which I would understand more from a scientific aspect, but the fur maybe blending in with the trees. But some people dimensional things, things that talk about they might not be kind of being able to manipulate the matter around them, which is just new for a lot of people to get on board with it. Like for me, for instance, I don't know too much about the subject, but hearing the varying perspectives, I'm trying to figure out how do we get this from what I can only imagine is probably a singular species just with different variations.
Well, I have a lot of friends who experience that. I trust them immaculately. I love them to death as persons and researchers. Just I have never experienced that, and I tell people openly,
Mind speak, right?
yeah, I've
Yeah.
never experienced mind speak, and I've had the feeling something was looking at me, and look around, and all of a sudden, then there's one over there standing there looking at me. Was that mind speak? I don't know. It wouldn't tell me to look this way or that way, but there was something that I knew was wrong. But I have, like I said, friends and researchers that do experience that, and because I haven't experienced something doesn't mean that they're not telling the truth. Like I said, it's just uh, I may experience it later. I know infrasound is something that they produce. Like I said, it can actually make you sick. Infrasound can almost kill you. My buddy Stephen was laying on a hospital bed, fixing to be injected in his heart with the
Stephen
shot.
Hill?
Stephen Hill, yeah,
He was laying on, he didn't tell me that.
yeah, he's pretty quiet about his personal stuff. But Stephen, I said, and this was from infrasound, and it nearly killed him. His wife will verify uh, this incident right there. So he's laying there just about to have the adrenaline shot put through his heart because it's affecting him so bad. So they can do that, man. I've had them hit me, man, and just boy, my hair stand up on the back of my neck. I had another friend was in there that was squirrel hunting, and he said it actually put him down to his knees, physically sick. I was there when my buddy's wife and my wife and his daughter were down there on Sulphur River at the boat ramp, and where one was hitting with the infrasound, and it actually made her where she was dry heaving. Well, I went up to help her. My wife, being the smartest of us all, yes, is already back at the truck. But I went up to help her, and whenever I did, man, all of a sudden, man, my eyes just started just water just started pouring out of my eyes. I wasn't scared because number one, I knew I needed. Anytime I could take somebody somewhere, it's up to me to protect them. And I know it's not going to be one of those things that where I'm not going to run when you've got people out there that you love and you care about, and there's something fixing to happen. But when I went to help her out, I was not expecting that because I wasn't scared. I had the only pistol down there. I knew what it was that we were experiencing, but yet, man, like I said, just water just goes to flowing down there. And then I believe it was the infrasound that hit her because as soon as I got right there, that the infrasound hit me as well. I've experienced that. Like I said, others have too. And infrasound, they use infrasound to detect military things out there that are hidden and stuff like that. There's all kinds of uses for it. And they say this infrasound, when some people say, well, they just disappeared, infrasound can make you catatonic. And if you're sitting there catatonic for 5 seconds, I've seen it with deer, but they're not the deer catatonic, but I've seen it when you're sitting there and all of a sudden they just squat down and they're laying right there in the grass. You just can't see them, but it looks like they've disappeared. And then all of a sudden, when you walk away, then up they stand and off they go. So Bigfoot, I think they use that catatonic that comes from being the infrasound to to not necessarily disable you, but to help them achieve whatever their motive is, whether it's to get away from you, whether it's not to be seen. And with that, I will say for sure, infrasound is real, and it's when you've experienced it, man. I mean, like I said, it's just like you've got one of those little nodes there from one of those shotguns the cops have, and it's steadily just running down. For me, it's running straight down my backbone right there. I had another friend I had told where I'd experienced that, and he was not a believer until that day, and he worked there for the gas line company that actually this gas line that this sighting happened on. And man, he went down there and he said, man, right when I got to where you told me it happened, he said, man, he said, I was vibrating. And the guy that was on the four-wheeler across from him riding down to do the examination on the gas equipment right there, he comes riding across and he's scared to death. He goes, man, there's something wrong. He said, I don't know what it is. There's something wrong. And so my buddy says, well, he said, why don't we just ride in there and just check the equipment and ride back real quick? And so they did. So again, that's one of the things that they have that they use in their benefit. They're so gifted in the way that the good Lord takes care of them, in the way of protective coloration. Again, you mentioned hair, like polar bear hair. Polar bear hair is clear. It's not white. And I learned that back in grade school years ago and forgot about it till I had a friend remind me of that. I'm like, oh, yeah, it is white. Yeah, I mean, it's clear. So polar bear hair is clear. Can they manipulate those, the light rays that go through there? Maybe, maybe not. But boy, they're masters at hiding. They love to, one of their favorite little tricks is just get behind a tree and just peek out every now and then, just like that. And I got my friend Daniel Becker last year, and I went down in February, and we're going down, and we're hearing some babies. He had gotten treed by a hog that morning, and so we're hearing the noise over here to the right. And it's limbs snapping. It's a little bit of the gibberish talk and stuff like that. So we stopped. I want to make sure it's not a hog, and I also want to make sure it's not a Bigfoot coming in, because, like I said, I think they tend to have their babies maybe around the 1st of December, even at the end of November there, because we're getting a lot of them that are already starting to grow some by then. So as we're sitting there, my buddy Daniel stops, and I said, take us some pictures, Daniel. He takes some pictures, and sure enough, as we're sitting there waiting, I said, we go look for us. I said, let me see those pictures. Looks at him, there's a Bigfoot in front of me, 40 to 50 feet, leaning behind a tree, just looking at. I never saw him because I was so interested in these over here, making sure they didn't charge me and Daniel. And I had a 45-70 rifle. Also, we have bears down here. I don't want to be a bear's dinner, lunch, or anything. So anyway, got that picture, and I mean, it's right there. You can see me. You can see me looking that way. You look straight ahead, and there's that Bigfoot right behind the tree.
How much did the advent of the internet help out with your research?
Man, it really did help a whole lot. There's several. One thing I found there, that there was certain websites that catalog the number of sightings that have been reported to them. It catalogs the area that's been reported to them. It gives you the time of the year that it was cataloged. If you got the time and you go through there and put all these in there, you can see patterns that evolve. I learned as much about Bigfoot from bass fishing, the patterns that you have to make you a successful bass fisherman, as anything else. And you see patterns evolve with Bigfoot. Certain times they're doing this, certain times they're doing this, certain times they're doing this. So it did. It really made it. It made it really good. It made it also where you could contact some of these people sometimes, and a lot of them were honest enough to talk back to you. I had a lady call me yesterday, and she's got them screaming out behind her house every night, 11 o'clock, scares her to death. It's just almost like clockwork. They are going to be investigated one night this week, I'll assure you, as soon as I can get everything squared away. But it makes it where people will open up to you more, and that for that I appreciate. That really helps my research a whole lot. Again, you can go through, you can compare tree structures, you can compare footprints, you compare callings that other people have gotten and recorded on things. So it really has really helped me just tremendously in doing. And it's also helped. I'm not monetized. I don't have I've got like Facebook and Facebook Messenger. I don't have a podcast or anything else like that. But it's made it to where a lot of people, thank goodness, they believe what I say and trust that they'll actually contact me. And that's made it great. to where I can go and they'll be as honest because they reached out. They're like me. They want some way to unburden what's inside there when they've had their sighting and their encounter, and they want to unburden. And so when they do, and then calling me, so it really makes it a great thing. Let's see, you got certain podcasts like yours, and you got certain websites, and there's just a lot to learn out there. Now, some of it that you get to learn is, hey, how not to be a Bigfoot researcher, because you can tell them people are pulling your leg, want their 15 minutes of fame. But as a rule, like I said, I don't disparage other real researchers there. I just kind of just keep my mouth shut because it doesn't do our community any good. But you can tell who's trying to pull your leg and who's not. Man, they just being on TV. There's a lot of TV shows you can see now. I could name a couple, but I'm not. Like I said, not to disparage them, but you can see, and then you can tell who's being real when you see somebody's posture change and you see the tightness in their shoulders and you see the tears start to form in their eyes and you see that they're starting to hyperventilate as they talk and you can see the quivering and things like that. I mean, something has happened to these people. They're not, they're not lying to you. They haven't rehearsed how to do these body functions. You can't control your body like that. Your body does the way it wants to, and you see them reacting in that way to reliving their encounter or to retelling their encounter. So it's made it really, really a tool for me, for the ones that I can research to see a body posture and how people react to telling their stories and stuff. So it's been really, really beneficial as far as the internet goes. And I'm computer literate, folks. I'm going to swear to you, I'm computer literate. I had to have my wife this morning make sure I could get on this call right here and me just click the button, or else, man, I may be off in outer space somewhere. But I don't believe Bigfoot is an alien. I don't believe he's a space creature. I've seen too much. He's leaving too much physical evidence to be a space creature. And maybe he is, maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't believe it. I've seen some things you can't explain in the sky. I've seen him on Lake Fork one night with some orange lights there going across the water. But I'm, an hour and a half from DFW Airport. Does the government have some kind of deal out there that they're testing or anything else like that? But coincidentally, I've also seen Bigfoot on Lake Fork one night wherever I was bass fishing. So you just kind of have to put it in perspective, put in a keyhole back here and wait and see if it comes back up again. And that's what I tend to do. So again, it's very, very interesting. And so thankful again to everybody who has contacted me and shared their stories with me, and to all our first responders and our veterans and everything who've made this life possible for us to have by what they've sacrificed. So
I stopped you from saying this earlier because I wanted to talk about it at a certain point in the show, but do you get a lot of opposing views on the idea of Bigfoot? Like, obviously there's skeptics out there and there's people that are just willing to call someone crazy without hearing them out before they can even look at something like this, especially something that could really change people's perspectives. But I feel like a lot of that must have changed because the UAP subject was finally acknowledged by the government, and there was a lot of things that they had lied about for years that a lot of people have been voicing for a long time that really had the skeptics for a brief time, for months. So they were pretty quiet, which was nice, but it did eventually go to just having their talking points again. But if you really examine from what we've been always told, Area 51 doesn't exist. Well, it does. UAPs don't exist. UFOs don't exist. You're a crazy nut job. And if you look at the Robertson panel, the scientists that had full pensions and academic scholarships that formed a committee to go look into these alien sightings back in the 90s were shamed and blackballed by their fellow institutions and other profiles of academia to the point where some of them killed themselves. So, what do you do now after all these years of calling someone a tinfoil hat that you make a UAP hearing? I mean, it wasn't a good one, but still, they're acknowledging the subject. So it makes you question things more. I'm curious how the criticism, your doubts about your own research, or just maybe, I don't know, should I keep researching this? It's honestly can cause more stress than anything. Just from your perspective, I talk about subjects that are taboo. The JFK one is taboo, even though it shouldn't be.
exactly, the JFK coincidentally is the most popular film there is that's been watched. The Zapruder film, like Patty, the Bigfoot that goes to there and walks over in California and turns his head. What you don't know about Patty is Patty was not the first Bigfoot sighting. It didn't start in California. It actually started in Mid-America. The first account is that I have found is in 1721 from Natchez, Mississippi. Then you've got one that's about 1796, I think, from South Carolina. Then you got 1829 Georgia, 1834 Arkansas, and then you go from there. So there was actually more. Now that we have our Indian tribes, Native American tribes that had their own name for these animals. Yes, that's true. But as far as having anything documented like that, and it wasn't just California. California kind of followed along on that. So that's something else that they've left up there. They've left us here in Middle America, guys like myself and Stephen and Shane, who are boy just as trustworthy as they can be. Man, who all these guys are crazy. Well, I've taken a lot. I take a lot of that heat, and for that I don't care because I've seen something. I've seen what is the eighth wonder of the world, man, and seen it several times. What's to argue with about that? And I've had guided several people where they've also had their first sightings. But there's a more ridicule to be gained by this than there is, I say more, a lot of ridicule than popularity. People are out there, even these shows out there, they're not out there to prove that Bigfoot does exist. They're out there to prove that Bigfoot doesn't exist. They don't, like I said, they're saying, oh, well, there's no pictures. Like I said, you know, you could have asked Shane, you can ask Stephen. Stephen's one of the best researchers there is. I said, we got over 100 pictures of Bigfoot with faces, with hands, with teeth, with them biting our camera. We got also, there's another creature that we'll talk about later it's called Dogman that's actually exists. Everybody says, oh no, they're not real. Yes, they are. And
Steven's got a photo of it.
yeah, Steve-O's got a photo of him, and I'm standing right there with him. He goes, "Stop!" We're always messing with each other. So we're walking up the hill, and we run everything backwards. So as we're coming up that day from checking our cameras, he goes, "Stop!" I said, "What am I doing?" He goes, "No, stop." Look, and sure enough, here comes Dogman walking out of this bottom of the woods, and he's being followed by three Bigfoot. But coincidentally, he is leading these Bigfoot. And so all of a sudden, this is true. Stephen's got the picture, and you can see them all of a sudden whenever they see us, the Dogman stays shrink, the Bigfoot just kind of like I talked a while ago, just kind of shrink, get into the brush. There's a baby Dogman with him. He runs and hides underneath a limb right underneath there. And then from one of the other pictures that we got there, we've got a mama and she's got a little juvenile and she's pushing him away from this encounter going down the edge of the tree line right there. But Dogman is real. Stephen got that picture. One of the best pictures you'll ever see. Coincidentally, didn't try to bother us, counter to what people say about him being so aggressive, and I hope they continue to be that way. But he got that picture, and it's we've also got pictures of a track line of an upright walking canine down there for about a 40-yard canine walking through the mud right there. We got several other pictures of Dogman there, but this one was intent. It was the sole purpose of our stopping right there in the middle of that field and Stephen stopping me and saying, stop and taking these pictures. So again, well, my research is just, I'm like a one-armed man without Stephen there. We've been friends for 30 years or more, well, actually more than that, probably close to 40 years now. And to have him in there, he the first night we went out, we went to a place and I said, well, I've got a place up there. And he goes, well, I do too. Well, coincidentally, we turned down the same road. I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. This is where my son saw one, or where I saw one, bringing my son home from. He preached right out of a high school, and so as we were coming home that night, and it was during the daylight savings time, so it was probably about 7:15, 7:30, and as we topped this hill, there's a Bigfoot walking down the side of the road, and I told my son, I said, watch this knucklehead up here. I said, he's either drunk or hitchhiking. He's right there on the side of the road. Sure enough, man, we get up there, that thing turns around and looks at us, and you're looking at Bigfoot face to face. And man, I said, Bigfoot, and I slammed on the brake, which was probably stupid. But anyway, you can see when the brake lights there, you see the Bigfoot run across the road. Coincidentally, this is the same place where me and Stephen pulled into. So that night, we get a video of three of them walking across a clear cut. There's a mom and two juveniles. Stephen was able to capture a still shot there of the Bigfoot in the dark, but you see the cone head, you see the black eyes and everything. You see mama's eyes changing color when she gets mad at me for knocking on trees. That's better. Knocking on trees. That's what I do whenever I do tree knock. Don't have something available to do something like that. And so then you see the juveniles misbehaving, and then you see her eyes change color again. So very, very interesting. Then 3 nights later, we go to Mercer Bio down there in Texarkana, and we see 3 more, but in different places, not together like that right there. So we saw 6 in 2 nights. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. So
Can you send me the video so I can put it at the end of this to be able to show people with it?
yeah, man, let me get Stephen to send it to you because, like I said, I'm not computer literate, but I'll text Stephen here in just a second, and I will make sure that he gets that sent to you because they're walking across there, man. You're watching eyes blink and everything. We found this place there when we pulled up there, and there's one tree. It's been peeled of all the bark, and then there's another one that's leaning onto it about this angle right there. And I told Stephen, I said, I don't know what it means around here yet. I said, but in Texarkana around Fout, I said that's Bigfoot sign. So sure enough, man, I mean, it was just right on. I will get in touch with Stephen, or you can get in touch with him
Yeah,
and
I'll get
have
in
him
touch with
send
them.
that to you.
What about incidents? Well, we mentioned you mentioned the TV shows. I mean, do you think that obviously they do it a little bit Hollywooded up, which kind of sucks for the actual research and credit of it, but don't you think it's good because it kind of keeps the culture alive? Like I wanted to ask this about the Gimlin footage, which is that the fact that everyone knows what that footage is. It's just like the Zapruder film. Everyone has seen it at a point where I think it keeps the mysticism, or at least a brief bit of knowledge, the door open to understanding more about the subject when you really want to look into it. If you want the ability to look into it, you can just Google and you will find a whole host of resources to be able to understand it.
And that's exactly right. The cool thing about that, the Gimlin, Patterson Gimlin film is they just last year came out with some new technology that allowed them to filter this up to where it's almost as clear as where you're looking at me and I'm looking at you. You can see this thing's butt cheeks. You can see the hair on the back. You can see, and I'm not trying to be crude, folks, but that's what they call it. A natal cleft or something. Maybe they call it a natal cleft. I couldn't
That's
quite
even
remember.
worse. That's even
Yeah.
worse.
And then you can also see where it has the mane back there, where the hair starts to meet the back. Like I said, you see the legs, and you can see also the patty. One of the things they have, they got these great big forearms through there. You can see that, and so they've actually cleared that up. So it was on. The proof is out there. Actually, did the show on there. So if you get a chance, look through there and find that, and you can see just how well they have improved this. I've had people say to me, well, what are you going to do when the Patterson film ends up being fake? Some said that don't affect my research at all. I said, I don't base my research on the Patterson film. I base it on what happened to me in 1977. We had some around when I was a little boy at the house that we lived, but I just didn't, I didn't believe it, even though we had one chase one of the men that brings us fresh garden vegetables, had him chase him over a mile up down one of these roads that led up down there to our house. But I also have a good friend named MK Davis, and MK is probably the foremost authority on this thing, and he's gone through it several, well, maybe not anymore. He was until that time. He's gone through it, and I called him one night. Somebody was giving me grief, and I said, MK, what about the white foots that you see when you see Patty walking and she bends that leg up like that? He said they were building a road, and that's just limestone on the bottom of her feet. He said that's 100% real, and I trust him my life, man. He, like I said, for his knowledge, when people actually honestly share knowledge with you like that, he's one of the best there is out there, and so I appreciate him for that. I believe the Patterson Gimlin film is real because my son is a dentist, and we were sitting there one Saturday afternoon. It was raining like crazy, and this show came on, and so I have a big screen TV. We recorded this film of Patty walking across the Bluff Creek flats there, and then whenever we got through, then we went through and with the remote and we stopped it at certain places. Like I said, my son being a dentist, he's got 4 degrees, so he's very proud of him, very smart. Not to say that because he's my kid. That's probably the worst. The one strike against him right there is the fact that he's my kid, brother. But we go through there and we look through it, and he goes, Dad, he said, I'm gonna tell you something. He said, every time that this thing moves, the corresponding muscle when it moves is moving or working or contracting. Even when you see it turn its head like that, you can see it where it actually moves its mouth, and you can see the mandibular muscle right there and everything. He goes, and he was a non-believer until that time. He goes, Dad, that's a real video, and that's medical science. I mean, he's having learned that from UALR there, and then here in Texas A&M in Texarkana, and also at the University of Tennessee up there in Memphis. He said that's a real animal. He said that's not a fake video anymore. And so with his testimony to that, and with what I've gotten with MK, and then with other people's there, that's a real animal that's walking through there, and you can actually see on Patty's anatomy right here around her chest where it appears that she has some of her hair missing through there, as though she might have had a baby in there as well. I've heard that story too, and so I think that's probably as good an explanation as what there is. But I believe it's real. I may be 100% wrong, but again, my research does not depend on the Patterson Gimlin film. I think it establishes it and buttresses it up. But after that, right there, like I said, I base mine based on what I have seen in the field. And like I said, I've seen a bunch of Bigfoot, folks, and I'm very lucky because I live close to Fout. I call it the Mecca. It's not Bluff Creek. It's Fout. If you go to Fout, we've got the creatures down there. They're still being seen. Just somebody will see one at least once a month that they report. And so to have them right there, to have that area, and then where Stephen and I, the one that we found there that we both went to together, we call that ground zero. And I'll assure you that that's one of the hottest areas in this whole country as far as for having Bigfoot sightings, finding tracks. I don't even cast tracks anymore, man. We were finding so many tracks up there with the plaster of Paris. And you know a Bigfooter by looking back into his pickup truck. If you see a deal of plaster of Paris, he's a Bigfooter. But I carry a plaster of Paris in my truck. But then I said to the point some days that you don't have time to cast all that stuff. I mean, so that's what we have that place that we go to. I've got four other men. Have one walked up on him while he's in his deer stand, screamed at him, changed his life. But his 80-year-old dad's on the other end of his property, hears the thing scream, calls him on the cell phone. Son, what was that? Dad, he said, you're not going to believe me if I tell you. And then he tells him. And so, but that's the second encounter they had with this creature down there. And so, again, a guy named Randy Crawford, who had one about 2 miles from where I had my first sighting, he actually found where they had come up on one who had taken a deer and broken its neck and put it in a limb like this, and they were just fixing evidently to skin it and eat it to get to the entrails there. And so he walked up on it. He went over and rigor mortis hadn't even set in. But then after that, not too far, he actually saw one walking down the edge of a culvert, just on the inside of the culvert, and a big cone-headed job. And said 2 miles from where I saw mine. So when he and my wife and his wife had played softball together, so naturally it was just one of those things that we had that common door. Got to talk to him. Boy, he's a great researcher. Man, I've got a guy named Jim Owenby. Jim, he's the man. If you heard my podcast not too long ago, he actually took me a log about 4 foot long, cut it down about 2 foot there on from the inside and hollowed it out. And he put me a little window just right there, and doesn't have any glass on, just put something right there to put my camera through. Man, it fools the Bigfoot. They walk on by. Got pictures about a month and a half ago of two babies and then a bigger one walking by, and you see the three fingers of the baby reaching up to touch my camera as it's hidden right here in this wooden log that we have hauled out. I got a picture the other day there where there's one. We have a PVC pipe about 8 foot long, probably in the 6 to 8 inch, depending on how they classify it. But we drop our apples in there. We have it at an angle. And so we bait them up with apples. We bait them up with peanut butter. We bait them up with Snickers bar. But sure enough, here's this
Damn,
one.
you getting them with all the good stuff.
Hey
Shit.
man, they've got a sweet tooth just like this fat boy right here now. But they do. They'll eat sardines. We've had success with sardines. But we got one. I've got one right here standing behind this piece of PVC right here. This 4.5 foot, 4 to 4.5 foot wide at the shoulders, just sitting there, just looking at you. Every time you get a picture like that, everybody thinks Bigfoot's got his head up. Most every time Bigfoot's got his head turned some way like that. I guess it just realizes if I stick that head up, somebody's going to put a bullet towards it. So they tend to do that. And again, their fingers, it tends to be on that middle finger, tends to be like the handprints I found tends to be bent like that right there, kind of towards the outside. And I've got several handprints that I found like that. Found one last Friday, as a matter of fact, in a place down there in Texas, a place where we went researching and where I had seen a Bigfoot before. So again, you see these things right here, and where the bud has splayed, the toes have splayed. It's not just rigid. The body has reacted just the way it's supposed to. And so again, that affirms it, as if I needed any affirming. That affirms the fact that this is a live being here that we're dealing with, and it is. It's I've talked to the policeman. I've interviewed the policeman, the man who was the sheriff, and also the lead deputy down here during the Fountain Monster deal. Man, he told me stories that had not made the papers yet. And I was able to record that. We're supposed to go an hour. He let me record him for 3.5 hours, asking questions that I felt were pertinent to this investigation. And then Steve and I have actually had, this is my game camera right here, and you can take a look. You can see this game camera has been chewed. All my glass is broken. The plastic has been broken. The thing up here that holds the batteries has been broken. And this was from a big old Bigfoot, probably about 10.5 foot tall from what he looks like. And so he destroyed this camera. And we had a spy camera on the other side. So we actually got to see a picture of him when he's walking down this road. He's 20 foot on the other side of where this little berm is. And you can see he's probably 5 foot wide right there. But he'll be 10.5 foot tall and over 1,000 pounds. I've lost three cameras And this is the fourth one right here that they have actually just destroyed my camera. We get their pictures of their faces. We hide the cameras. We don't put the cameras, strap them to a tree so that they can walk through and bump their head like if you would if you were walking down your hall and your wife done put a new cuckoo clock up there or something. We hide them in brush tops. And all by that right there, they may smell it. They may be to where they're suspicious, but since they can't get a visual on it, they walk on by. Then here goes that light. Well, the next thing you either get a picture of the fur of the body when it walks by, or else you get a face looking down there at where that light is, or you get a hand reaching in through there to get your camera, and then your camera gets tossed. And I've got three in the woods up there at Ground Zero right now, and one at Falk that I haven't found yet. But I hope if I do that I find it and the SD card is in there, that nobody else finds it and realize what's up there. Because Steve and I hunt public land. We're not just on private land. My buddy's place there that had the one the deer stand is private, but he lets me go in there. And that is really a blessing to have something like that. If I want to go up there and put a decoy, I can do what I need to do. But the rest of the time we're hunting private public land. And truly, I don't think these people know what's going on up there until something walks by and they see it. Because Steve and I had a deer stand up there that's been there for the 5 years we've been researching. It's been up there for two more since then, and nobody came back to get it. It's still there. And they had some kind of encounter. You don't leave a expensive deer stand. Then he had a camera right behind it there in the woods, still there, because of whatever it was came by. We have one creature that we found there about 20 or 30. Y'all hear my dog? Excuse me. My dogs want to appear on the show. Okay, good. I was going to apologize for that. But sure enough, you see where this deer stand is, and it's still there. And something has messed this person up because the ladders that you climb still strapped to the side of the tree. The deer stand, I mean, it's a bow stand. There's a difference between a bow stand and a gun stand as a rule, and it's a bow stand. It's got the platform and everything. And then but we found one there we call the witch. And I had put a camera there. Well, they had thrown my camera. Well, finally I find it. And whenever I do, most of the time I carry my card reader with me. I put the SD card into the camera. And when I do, the first picture that pops up is one that's got his teeth like that, but he doesn't have teeth like a Bigfoot. I've got a picture of a Bigfoot that's biting my camera. He's got four teeth, just like you and I've got right there. And he's got a space right there. And then he has a canine, but it don't go way down like a baboon's canine or anything like that. It's just barely below the other side of the tooth line. I showed it to my son. He goes, Dad, that space is called the primate space. I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting right there. Whatever big, I'm not saying it's 8, I'm not saying it ain't, but it's called the primate space in us as well. And so to find that right there, but this one here has got these real nasty teeth. And you can see he's bent over the camera, his eyeballs, man, he's looking at me like that right there. And I'm truly afraid of that one, truly afraid. I don't like going in that area where it is by myself. But I'm also very
Surprised you can go in any areas by yourself. I wouldn't want to be doing that shit. I could tell you that.
hey, when that happens right there, it tends to get your attention. And like I said, I've got some others there, boy, that are aggressive. Again, like I said, I had one that tried to get after me and my dog. And we talked about the other encounter. Besides my wife and my son, got after me and my black pit bull. And thank goodness I had the fob to my truck, because as he had already come down the hill, and I think he was going to initiate a confrontation. So I hit the fob on my truck and started honking, and it allowed us to get back to the vehicle, even though I was armed pretty good. And I was going to dust his fur with everything I had in there. But anyway, my dog finally jumped over my seat and my console at the same time, landed in her seat. I'm just sitting there, just quivering. But she was doing all she could to protect me while we were out there. And like I said, had I not had that fob to disorient him, I think it would have ended up a worse one than what it was. But thank goodness for that right there. And I don't want to shoot one. I don't want to kill one. So far, man, they're so funny. They're almost familial in their way they interact. They're the care they have for each other. I saw 2 7-foot brothers walking down the edge of this same clear cut where me and Stephen have the video right there. Watched them one day. Stephen was a little bit late, and I'm watching these guys walk for 50 to 60 yards. They're actually pushing on each other and all this stuff like this. Well, when Stephen drives up in his work dually, they just ease off into the woods. Stephen and I go run our cameras, and we come back. And before we're ever out of the ground right there, we're getting the sound, the alarm sound from the cameras that are going to our cell phones. And the Bigfoot are already out there in the field again. So again, but the way they treated each other, the way the mamas do the babies, let's say they're very, very nurturing. I've got a picture of a mama walking across a field, and she stops. I'm thinking, man, I'm finally gonna get a video of a Bigfoot walking. She just stops, and we sit there, and my friend Daniel Becker's with me, and I'm sitting there looking at her, and I told Daniel, I said, there's something moving right there. I said, I don't know if it's hair from the wind or what it is. So I said, but I had somewhere to be that night. I just had to take a picture, just a still picture. So whenever I did, boy, the coat on this thing is beautiful. It's a big, beautiful brown one. And then whenever I get the picture, then I get home, then I put it in there, and then I zoom in to the place it was moving. And you can see Mama's eyes and her nose. Mama's got kind of a nose like a human. That's the only one I've really seen. It looks like a human. It's almost like a proboscis monkey, what they call it. But then you look right here and you see the eyes and the nose of her baby. She's got this baby up here on her chest, and this is walking across clear cut. So again, when you see that and the way that they interact with each other, the obvious feeling, emotional feeling that they have, not just like any animal is going to protect its young, but the emotional feeling they have for each other, for other members of their troop, it's really exciting. And when we go out, we don't just go out with helter skelter research. Man, we go out trying to see if we can't prove something, have a theory most of the time, and to see if there's something that we can add to with that theory that you can classify as quote classic Sasquatch or classic Bigfoot behavior. And so sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. But if not, you still have a good time. So
Have you ever heard of the Gary Crew incident?
yes, I have.
Do you know much about it? Because I've heard a lot of researchers mention that was like their start into it, was hearing that. I think it's Jerry Crew, if I'm not
Jerry
mistaken.
Crew, yeah,
Yeah.
Jerry Crew, yeah, he was the head of the road crew up there in California. I think it was 1958 there, and he was finding all the tracks and stuff like that. And he jumped out, and the first thing he looked at after he cast it, and he goes, "Boy," he said, "whatever this thing, it has a really big foot." Well, so coincidentally, they say that's where Bigfoot got its name. But I watched a TV show the other day that was copyrighted. I went through on the internet and looked at it. It was copyrighted 1952, and there was an Indian there or Native American on the show, not trying to offend anybody, on the show. And his nickname was Bigfoot. And coincidentally, he had been named after what this big uh, being was that lived in the forest. Like I said, this is 1952. So that's 6 years before Jerry Crew, which is 1958, and which was the Patterson Gimlin film was 1967. So about 8 to 9 years before that. So we know they had been there in California. But his what he had seen, they were seeing this on a daily basis. And so after that, that kind of led to the Patterson incident in the long and short of it. So his what he had was really interesting in that right there, because it wasn't a popular thing at that time. It wasn't like what you see now. Now, in saying that, the TV shows we have now have made it more acceptable to talk about Bigfoot, and I thank them for that. Even some of these shows that are hoaxes, and there's some out here they're hoaxes, and they're not finding anything and not going to expect to. I don't expect them to really find anything unless it just walks in front of the thing. But still, they're making it to where we can talk about it. People are interested in it. And we got a deal here, not this weekend, but next weekend down at a place called Smith Park with Keith Crabtree, the man who played the creature in the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek. And we'll have sometimes 150 to 200 people down there camping, free camping down there because of their interest in Bigfoot. They bring their children. They come down to camp. We get around at night. We have a big bonfire, and the people, anybody's had any kind of encounters, recordings, or anything like that, are invited to open up and tell the story. So sometimes that town hall can last, 2 to 2.5 hours right there. So really interesting. But they're being seen. Their numbers are increasing. Now people say, well, how many are there? Man, I can't tell. Nobody can really. There's a bunch of them here in Arkansas. Let's see, of all the counties in Arkansas, I think all but about 12 have had encounters. And there's a Highway 71 comes from Louisiana, the Arkansas line, runs all the way up the west side of the Arkansas border, goes on up into Missouri, and that's almost 300 miles. And there is a Bigfoot encounter reported every 8.3 miles. And man, that's pretty impressive. And that's when you see something other like that with them. These aren't just crazy people, man. These are people who lived there all their life. They're not planning on moving. They know even by disclosing this stuff, their neighbors may laugh at them. Well, so what? I said they kind of got to unburden themselves. But to have that 8.3 miles, and one of the very first places that they found Bigfoot, Arkansas had what called the Wild Man that was found. And it was a place called Paraclifta. It's 35 miles from my home, about 15 from Stephen's home up there. And so this thing, they were trying to catch it, and they ran it across an open field. The lake was kind of frozen. And so this one guy was going to get all the glory himself. He goes up there, and whenever he does, this thing pulls him off his horse, bites him, gouges out one of his eyes, jumps across the horse, and takes off with it, just kind of riding crossways on the horse. That's a documented story. You know, so I wasn't there. This kind of sounds far fetched, but if you make one of these things mad, I have a lady who has a horse up there in a little town not too far from here. She invited me to come up because this thing was scaring her horse. And I actually have another friend whose horse was killed by one, but this thing is scaring her horse. And so she invited me graciously to come up to her land, and I did. And there was a lot of brush around the edge of the corral. And I had on a black hoodie with my pulled up on my head because it was cold. As I walk across there and going down the edge of the fence line, this horse actually comes up and takes his nose, and chuffs at me like that, like, man, I don't I don't think you're a Bigfoot, but I don't want you in here basic, regardless, because of the way you look. I told her, so I'm gonna step back outside the horse pen and just let you walk through there. So do I believe it? You betcha. They're king of the forest as far as that goes.
Well, coming up on a wrapping point here, because you've given me enough of your time, but where can people really look for information or just really try and understand? Like, what would you give to someone who was looking into researching Bigfoot for the first time? What would you tell them from your research, but also resources, information, sites, groups? I'm part of Southern Bigfoot Alliance now on Facebook, so it's nice to be involved in that community and see everybody's different varying perspectives and at least post about things as well too.
Oh yeah, Southern Bigfoot is great. Like I said, I went with them one time. The first time I had ever met them, went out and stayed there at their research area right there, and had a Bigfoot walk by. I drive a Z71 Chevrolet. It was 2.5 foot tall, taller than the roof of my truck, and he's got his hand on my vehicle, and he's going down through there, and he's looking at my food that I have on the pasture side because there's bears up there. And so I had put it inside, and so I'm fixing to hear my daggum windshield bust. There ain't nothing I could do about it. But I did have a pistol at a spotlight, and was set up with both of them in my hand. My son had his shotgun, and my buddy next to me had his 22. Well, anyway, the two men in front of me were in a pup tent, and I was afraid that it might get kind of hairy there, get some friendly fire if I light this dude up. So he runs back to the river. When he does, I light up the outside. About 5 minutes later, he comes back, and my buddy's done turned on his recorder on his phone. Here comes this Bigfoot with two rocks, and just whacks these rocks together right outside our tent. We all stand up. I light up the outside again. He takes off and goes to the river. And then whatever he does, about the next 30 minutes, whoop, 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 which is a common sound that Bigfoot makes, this whooping sound. So again, it's one of them deals like that. Get involved with some of these people. Now, some of these people will try to fleece you, man. They say, well, yeah, I'll be glad to take you out on a Bigfoot hunt for $500. Well, there's some people out there that'll take you out, like I said, some of these groups for free. You just get with these groups like that, like Southern Bigfoot Alliance. Next thing I would do, like I said, get on there and look at, you can look, Pennsylvania has a Bigfoot deal. Ohio has a Bigfoot website. So Louisiana, I did some work the other day with a group called Tex Law, which is Texas, Louisiana. Boy, you talk about some great researchers. I had never met them before. They actually built their own listening equipment, their own video equipment. Really, really great guys. So you get on there, you find some of these people that have these websites like this right here, and you look at those. A lot of them have, again, that ledger that's listed of all their encounters. They also have, if you have questions or anything like that, you can send it to us right there. I do look. I've got three websites there that have a sightings listing or a sightings grid. I look at them quite often. Only two of them now are basically active. The other's real good though. It was one of the best there ever was before the man had to quit that one. But look through there and you can find where some of these Bigfoot reports are happening. And I'll use that just to see, hey, have I ever had any encounters there? Number two, if I'm ever in the area, just to kind of swing through there and look, see what the terrain looks like, and even talk to some of the people. Some people are very, very, had some people in Louisiana last year, boy, just gracious as they could be, invite me to their property. Hey, we've got them on our property. Please come on down, So that's another thing that I look for right there. Again, read your papers. Go back to your library. Library is a forgotten resource, man. We got the internet, but the library's got a lot of things in there that has not been put in on the internet. So looking at those right there, find you an area that's had some Bigfoot reported Bigfoot sightings or that kind of area, and then try to go there. Not every patch of woods has Bigfoot, even though when I drive by one, I'm always looking just in case. But find you an area that has Bigfoot or has Bigfoot reportings. Try to get in touch with somebody there that will talk to you, and a lot of people will. I see a lot of people contact me through through Facebook Messenger. Man, like I said, I'm glad of it because I find get a lot of information, like the lady who called me yesterday. Quite by accident, people I'd never met before, but now I'm very honored to call friends, and I think they call me friends as well. So look at those things right there, like that right there. See what you got, and if not, find one of these places where they take you out for the $400 or $500. Look them up, verify them that what they're doing is legit. Try to talk to some other people they've had, and then do that. And that's a good way to get started right there. Again, you've got a camera on your cell phone. If you're sitting there, my camera on my cell phone is one of my best friends because number one, it documents the date of things that have happened. So if I get a picture of something other, I can just go back and look on the picture and then look at the date like that. But then also you can sit there and when you get home, you can blow it up. You can do it more, peruse it more closely than what you normally would, and so that really makes a big difference too. Have that right there with you because it's one of your best resources that you can access pretty doggone quick. Take a picture of something, not necessarily sighting, because man, you're not going to catch them. They're fast. If you catch them, I've got some there that are running through there and they look like blurs, but still, they were Bigfoot sightings. Some of the proudest pictures I've got. But so do something like that right there. Look through there and again, prepare yourself. Don't just try to go out there helter skelter. I do a lot of the wildlife management areas here in Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. Also go to some of the state parks. That's access to land that you wouldn't normally have. Big, vast areas of land there, and the Bigfoot live there. They tend to know that we're coming through there. We leave a lot of stuff in trash cans. They would classify as foodstuffs. Again, we're also their entertainment. They look to just sit there and hide in the woods and watch. So go to those right there. Again, go to your reservoirs. I like to bass fish and been fishing a long time. I go to some of these places I go and whenever I get through fishing, I'll sit there and I'll walk around the boat ramps and stuff. And boy, you'd be surprised. You'll find a lot of tracks around these boat ramps where people come up, they just toss fish out on the bank. And when they do, man, hey, that's like going to the KFC buffet for Bigfoot. So that's another good thing that you can do. It's and then two, another point I'm going to close with is it doesn't have to be expensive to be effective. One of my favorite tools is a little 8-inch tall megaphone, plastic megaphone. I use that and call through it, and then when I get through, let's just put it up to my ear like a ear trumpet, like some of the old timers used to have. And then also the inside tube to a paper towel roll. Man, it will intensify your voice. It takes away the mechanical sound from it. And a lot of times the Bigfoot will react to that right there. So again, and one more, a whistle, like if you go to Cracker Barrel, they've got that train whistle. That thing will call them suckers in, man. They may not come in, but they're gonna answer when they hear it. So something like that. Rock clacking, like I said, free as a bird, rocks all over the place. One of the best sightings I ever had there was rock clacking there. So with the rock clacking, something like that right there, and again, try to use your resources with your other people. And if somebody puts you down, just go on to the next one. There's going to be trolls out there, and you can expect that from that. But once you get that first sighting or that first track, a lot of people never find a track in their life. That don't mean it's not real. But when you get that first sighting, or again you find that track, or you hear that first tree knock in there, man, it changes your relationship with the universe. You're like, oh man, I thought I was the top of the food chain here. Not quite. So I'll shut up, which is really strange. That's not normally me either, but I know we're pressed for time. But
Bill, thank you again for giving me the time, man. I really appreciate it.
guys, I appreciate that. I want y'all to know everything I've told you is true, and I appreciate y'all taking the time to listen to your podcast there, and for you having me on here again. It means the world to me. That's how we've got a group here now that's actually trying to share information rather than somebody trying to get that $1 million picture that ain't never going to be there. And
Well,
we got people that are sharing information, so it's going to get better for us in Bigfooting. So thank you again, man. I
I'm
appreciate it.
always open to talking to researchers. I can tell you that it's been a fascinating subject for me so far. I'm learning, at least trying to learn as much as I possibly can. Catch up on you guys.
Will do, man. Hey, catch down with Southern Bigfoot sometime. It's worth the trip, I promise you. Really good guys. They show you track demonstrations, take you to an area that's had proven sightings, just like I said, that one that I went to with them said, here's that big boy walking across there, putting his hand on my truck. So really, really a good people. You'll meet some of the best people. They may look a little different sometimes. They may be wearing Bigfoot shirts or bass fishing shirts, but they're going to be some of the best people you ever meet as far as character wise.
And thanks everybody for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank. Stay tuned for our next episode.